Have you ever wondered why the year starts on January 1st or why February only has 28 days? Well, I was started to think about that one day, and it led to this rabbit hole to look into the history of our calendar, and it does indeed have quite a bit of a history. And it's old. Like, I just calculated how old it is today, and it is 2070 years old as of now. So that is if we go all the way back to the Roman era, as it was introduced by Julius Caesar. This happened 42 BC. And what he did, he took the moon out of the calendar that they had back then, and they also had some other problems with the calendar. It was kind of a mess from what I read. But there was one change, so it's not. So that was called Julian Calendar, but today it's called Gregorian Calendar, and that is because on the year 1582, the Pope Gregory VIII modified this slightly because there was a little problem with that the calendar was getting out of sync with the seasons. So he fixed that. So that was the only change that was made to the calendar. Otherwise, it's still the same. And that is also where the months July and August come from. So they just wanted to kind of have a few months named after them. So what I'm saying is that basically we are using Roman era calendar today. And I started to think about that because to me, the calendar doesn't make too much sense. Like, it seems random. With the months, there's no relation to nature or anything that would happen on nature. Like, it's all more or less politics. At least I remember reading that there were some decisions made that just was kind of politicians made it back in the day in the Roman era. And that's what we have. And yeah, now I'm kind of thinking it's like a business calendar. It's also, the good thing about the calendar is that it stays in sync with the season, so that's very useful. But what I wanted to talk about, that there are other calendars as well, and it's kind of a fascinating history with all of that. And still today, there are civilizations that use other calendar, like a lunar calendar. For example, Chinese, they have the Chinese calendar and the Chinese New Year that is coming pretty soon, so in February. The Chinese, the year changes on the second moon after the winter solstice. So that is the rule that they follow, that then they know like when the year changes. So it happens on the new moon. Quite fascinating. But that they are not the only ones. So throughout history, there's been many civilizations that have been using a lunar calendar or then a lunar solar calendar, so that they have been kind of following both the sun and the moon. So we have Babylonians, the Chinese that already was mentioned, Hebrew, Islamic calendar, the ancient Greek, they had one, and Mayans, they had the calendar that had the moon in it. Ancient Romans, so before Julius Caesar changed the calendar, the ancient Romans, they were following the moon. Hindus, Polynesians, and the Celts. So quite a bit of calendars. And so what I'm saying here is that the ancient people and the ancient civilizations, they very much liked that the moon was in the calendar. But today, we don't really think about it anymore. We don't know what's happening above us. We don't really see the stars or the moon. We just look at our phones and that's it. And I don't think too many people really know too much about any of this, or stop to think about why we have the calendar the way we have it. And I don't know, should we? or why should we? But there was something that just interested me in this topic, and I started to research it and look more into the moon and more into what would a moon calendar look like. Like, would there be a better calendar that we could be using? So I'm not proposing that we will be changing calendar because that's, well, impossible. But I am actually using a moon calendar myself for my own planning. So when I'm planning my life, when I'm setting goals, when I'm creating plans, then I like to use the moon because it is, I can see it on the night sky, I can observe it, and I like the idea that it is based on something. So it's kind of, it has some logic behind it. So I have tried to create a system that would be based on events that happen on nature, and everything would be based on that rather than random things. And that has led to me finding, like, trying to develop basically a calendar that I'm using. And you can actually find more about it if you like. And you can also find more information about the life planning system that I have developed for myself. You can go to my website, ottovictor.com/system. And from there you can download a PDF that explains a little bit more about it, and also join my newsletter, and I will be sending you some info about that and other interesting topics. So how am I using this moon calendar? So in a very short explanation, I'm just looking always over to the new moon and the new moon day, and then that is when I sit down and review where I am and create new plans, new intentions, and new goals for the next moon. And it gives me this point in time when I do stop and look at things from the bigger perspective, because otherwise we tend to create this tunnel vision that we are just trying to do something, and then oops, the entire year ended, and oh, by the way, we forgot that we had all these other goals or some other project that we had. So we do need some system where we have a routine that we do think about the big picture and think about and stop to think about, is there something else we could be or should be doing, and so on. So the moon is very good at that. I feel like it's the right interval, and it just feels natural. I guess it is natural. So that's how I'm using it, and that kind of is the basis from the system I have. And I've been using it for about 9 months now, and every month I have been liking it more and more. It's been working very well for me, and I thought, like, if it works for me, like, could it work for you? So I wanted to share that with you. So I did. So I wanted to share that with the other people if they also find it helpful, and very curious to hear about other people's experiences with that system. And maybe I do think it still needs more work. Like, there's a lot there, like when you're thinking about how to manage your life. So it's not just the calendar, but I'm trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And I've been experimenting myself, trying various things, like how to create these goals, how to ensure that I stay ahead and keep growing, keep evolving, and follow through with my goals. But then also, like, one thing I found, because I've been trying various things for several years now, and one thing that I found was that often the goals were too, like, let's say, specific, or they were getting in the way of life, which wasn't good either. So sometimes the goals can be too rigid and limiting, and that's not really what we want when we are using a system. Like, we don't want the system to prison us. So, like, we we need to be able to make changes to our plans whenever necessary. So that system needs to be flexible enough. So that's kind of, this moon brought me this new iteration with this system that gave it some more flexibility and kind of, I guess, a new perspective. One thing that the moon and the sun and everything else, like one thing I've been thinking of is that there are these seasons, and as humans, like seasons and rhythm, like everything is important, and we should just embrace that more. And let's say sun gives us the rhythm of the day. So there's a day and night. So sun goes around, and that's what we call a day. And we get a sleep cycle basically from that. Maybe the most important thing. But then the sun also gives us the seasons. So there's this bigger rotation that takes a year, and it ends to the symbolic death and rebirth of the sun that also the ancients have been following and celebrating for quite a while. And then we have, of course, the moon, which also goes through a cycle. And so right now, most people don't really use the moon in their lives, so that the moon would be giving them some sort of a cycle. But I'm thinking, like, what if we do that? What would the cycle look like? And then also we have the year, so the seasons. So should we also be thinking that the year gives us some sort of a cycle? So instead of just working on like a robots, like 24/7 around the year, the same day, Groundhog Day, every day, whole year, what if we would embrace the idea that there are seasons and different times or different things? So maybe now in the winter time, I should be focused on something else than I would be doing on the summertime. And maybe this should be guiding me in some ways on what type of projects and goals I set for myself on each moon. So these are all, I guess, questions at this point that I'm experimenting with. So today, as I'm filming this video, is January 10, and this is now getting to the end of the moon, and it's also getting end of the year in this system I have, because unlike the Chinese, I thought it would make more sense if the year starts on the first new moon after the winter solstice, and that time is approaching. So the new moon is coming on January 11th, which means that the first day of the next year would be January 12th in the Gregorian calendar. So I'm about to kind of review my year, review the past month, and then think about the year ahead and kind of what I would like to happen, and then also set some intentions for the new moon. So maybe if you're into this, then do the same. Now is the time, and maybe the moon has some support, some sort of a special juice that helps you to follow through with your intentions and goals. At least I have found that to be super helpful. So give it a try and let me know what you think, and also let me know if you know something more about this topic. Feel free to create a comment below, and then check out the resource and the page I have on the ottovictor.com/system. And with that, I think I'm finished. I'm gonna be enjoying these last days of this year.